I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who goes through her husband's phone, but at 62 years old, after 38 years of marriage, I found myself doing exactly that. And what I discovered didn't just break my heart, it shattered everything I thought I knew about my entire life. Please stay with me until the end and let me know which city you're listening from. I need to know my story is being heard. It started on a Thursday morning in March, the kind of morning that feels like any other. Coffee brewing, morning light streaming through the kitchen window, the familiar sounds of Robert moving around upstairs getting ready for work. He was 65, semi-retired from his accounting firm, though he still went in 3 days a week to keep busy, he said, keep his mind sharp. I was loading the dishwasher when I heard his phone buzz on the counter. He'd left it there while he showered. The screen lit up with a text preview. Just a glimpse, but enough to make my hands freeze on the plate I was holding. Last night was perfect. When can I see you again? V. My heart stumbled. V? Who was V? I told myself it was nothing, a colleague, a client, but my hands were shaking as I set down the plate. The phone buzzed again. I can't stop thinking about you. The world tilted slightly. I reached for the counter to steady myself. 40 years of marriage, and in that moment, something fundamental shifted beneath my feet. I heard the shower turn off upstairs. Without thinking, I picked up his phone. His passcode had always been our anniversary, August 15, 1986. My fingers trembled as I entered it. It didn't work. He'd changed it. The bathroom door opened upstairs. I set the phone down quickly, my pulse hammering in my throat. Robert came down moments later, smelling of soap and aftershave, smiling that easy smile I'd trusted for 4 decades. "Morning, beautiful," he said, kissing my cheek, the same ritual we'd had for years, but this time his lips felt like a stranger's. He grabbed his phone without looking at it, slipped it into his pocket, and poured himself coffee. "I'll be home late tonight," he said casually. "Board meeting ran long last time, so they're ordering dinner." "Okay," I heard myself say. My voice sounded normal. How was that possible? He kissed me again and left. I stood in the kitchen for a long time after his car pulled away, staring at nothing. The coffee maker beeped, the clock ticked. Everything looked the same, but nothing was. I spent that day in a fog. I couldn't eat. I couldn't focus on the book I was reading. I kept seeing those words. Last night was perfect. Last night, Robert had said he was meeting his old college friend Tom for dinner. He'd come home at 10, smelling of wine and claiming they'd talked for hours about the old days. Had he lied? Was he lying now? By afternoon, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe V was Victoria from the firm. Maybe it was an inside joke. Maybe I was losing my mind. But at 63, you've lived long enough to know the difference between paranoia and intuition, and my intuition was screaming. That evening, Robert came home at 9:30. He kissed me hello, told me about the boring meeting, and went upstairs to change. I heard him laughing softly in the bedroom, on the phone. I climbed the stairs quietly, stood outside our bedroom door. His voice was low, warm, intimate. I know. Tomorrow, I promise. She won't suspect anything." She. Me. I was she now. My hand was on the doorknob when he said, "I love you too." I don't remember walking back downstairs. I don't remember sitting down, but suddenly I was on the couch, the room spinning, my breath coming in short, painful gasps. Robert came down 20 minutes later, relaxed, smiling. "Want to watch something?" he asked, reaching for the remote like nothing had happened, like he just told another woman he loved her in our bedroom. "Sure," I whispered. We sat there for 2 hours, watching a show I couldn't see, while my entire world crumbled silently around me. He fell asleep beside me around 11, his head tilted back, mouth slightly open. The man I'd built a life with, the father of my 2 children, the person I'd trusted more than anyone on earth. Who was he? After he went to bed, I sat alone in the dark living room until 3 in the morning. I thought about our wedding day, the birth of our daughter Sarah, our son Michael's graduation, every Christmas, every anniversary, every ordinary Tuesday. Had any of it been real? When dawn came, pale and cold through the windows, I made a decision. I needed to know the truth. Not the sanitized version Robert would give me if I asked, the real truth, the kind that lives in deleted messages and secret phone calls and lies told with a kiss. I needed to become someone I never thought I'd be, a detective in my own marriage. That morning, I waited until Robert left for work, then I went upstairs to his office. He kept everything organized, files labeled, drawers neat. I'd never had a reason to search through his things before. Now I had every reason. I started with his desk. Bank statements, tax returns, business correspondence. Nothing unusual. But in the bottom drawer, underneath a stack of old golf magazines, I found something that made my blood run cold. A credit card statement. Not ours. His name, but an address I didn't recognize. A P.O. box. I scanned the charges. Restaurants I'd never been to. A hotel. A jewelry store. Flowers multiple times. All of it on dates when he said he was working late or meeting friends or at a conference. The charges went back 6 months. 6 months of lies lined up in neat columns with dollar amounts attached. I photographed every page with my phone, my hands steadier now. Anger has a way of focusing the mind. Next, I searched his closet. In the pocket of a suit jacket he rarely wore, I found a receipt. Dinner for two at an expensive Italian restaurant downtown. The date was our anniversary last year, the same night he'd claimed he had food poisoning and couldn't take me out. We'd ordered pizza instead, and I'd eaten mine alone while he rested upstairs. The pizza tasted like cardboard. I told myself it didn't matter. We'd celebrate another night. We never did. I sat on the bedroom floor, receipt in hand, and something inside me turned to stone. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was calculated, sustained, deliberate deception. Over the next few days, I watched Robert like a stranger. I smiled when he smiled. I asked about his day. I kissed him goodnight. And every moment I was gathering information. I noticed things I'd missed before. How he always took his phone to the bathroom. How he'd started going to the gym 3 times a week when before he'd never exercised. How he'd bought new clothes, more stylish than his usual button-downs and khakis. He was dressing for someone, just not for me. One afternoon, I called the number on the credit card statement. A woman's voice answered, professional and crisp. "Pinewood Suites, how may I help you?" "I'm calling about a reservation," I said, my voice not quite my own. "Under Robert Chen?" "One moment, please." The sound of typing. "Yes, Mr. Chen has a monthly reservation with us, the executive suite. Would you like to make changes?" Monthly. "No," I whispered. "No changes." I hung up, stood in the kitchen, staring at the phone in my hand. A monthly reservation at a hotel 20 minutes from our house, while I was home, cooking dinners he barely ate, watching shows he barely saw, living a life he barely inhabited. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay beside Robert, listening to him breathe, and felt nothing but a cold, vast emptiness where love used to be. At some point, I must have dozed off because I woke to find him gone and a note on his pillow. "Early meeting, love you, R." Love you. The words felt like a slap. I got up, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I'd never been good with technology. Sarah always teased me about it, but I knew how to search. I typed in Pinewood Suites and found their website. Luxury accommodations for discerning guests, starting at $300 a night. How much had he spent on her, on this woman whose name I didn't even know? Then I remembered V. I pulled up Facebook, feeling ancient and foolish, and searched Robert's friends list. I'd never done this before, had never needed to, but there, halfway down, was a name that made my stomach drop. Vanessa Chen. Chen, his last name. I clicked on her profile. The photo loaded slowly, and when it did, I felt the air leave my lungs. She was beautiful, young, maybe 40, dark hair, bright smile, expensive clothes, and in several photos, always in the background, carefully cropped but visible if you looked closely, Robert. at a restaurant, at a park, at what looked like a resort. I scrolled through her photos, my coffee growing cold beside me. There were hints everywhere. A man's watch on a nightstand that looked like Robert's, a reflection in a window of someone who could have been him. Nothing explicit, but enough, more than enough. Then I found the one that broke me, a photo from 2 months ago, a sunset taken from what looked like a balcony. The caption read, "Grateful for unexpected joy." In the reflection of the glass door behind her, clear as day, stood Robert, smiling, his arms around her waist. While I'd been home that weekend, recovering from a cold, he told me he was at a work retreat. I'd believed him. I'd made him soup before he left. I closed the laptop, sat in the silence of my kitchen, and for the first time since I'd seen those text messages, I cried. Not soft tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere I didn't know existed. 40 years, 40 years of my life, and it had all been built on sand. When the tears finally stopped, I felt different, emptied out, but also clearer, lighter in a strange way. The worst had happened. The thing I'd feared without knowing I feared it had come true. Now what? I could confront him, scream, cry, demand answers, but I knew Robert. He was a lawyer's son, trained in deflection. He'd deny everything, gaslight me, make me doubt what I'd seen with my own eyes. No, I needed more than suspicions and reflections and photos. I needed proof he couldn't talk his way out of. That afternoon, I called my daughter Sarah. She lived 2 hours away with her husband and 2 kids. We talked every week, surface-level conversations about the grandchildren and her job and the weather. This time, I asked her something different. "Honey," I said carefully, "do you know anyone who's good with technology, phones specifically?" There was a pause. "Mom, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I just need some help with something." Another pause, longer this time. Then, quietly, "Is this about Dad?" My breath caught. "Why would you ask that?" "Mom." Her voice was gentle. "I'm not blind. He's been different lately, distant. And you sound tired." I closed my eyes. "I need to know the truth, Sarah. That's all." She was quiet for a moment, then, "I know someone, a friend from college. He does digital forensics. I'll send you his number." "Thank you, baby." "Mom?" Her voice cracked slightly. "Whatever you find, I'm here, okay?" "Okay." After we hung up, I sat with the phone in my lap, Sarah's words echoing in my mind. She'd noticed. Of course she'd noticed. Children always know when something's wrong, even when they're grown. The number Sarah sent came with a name, David Martinez. I called him that evening while Robert was in the shower. David's voice was kind, professional. "Sarah said you might need some help. What's going on?" I told him everything, the text, the credit card, the hotel, the photos. My voice stayed steady, clinical. I'd cried enough. "I can help," he said when I finished. "But I need you to understand something. Once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Are you sure you want to know?" "I'm sure." "All right. Does your husband back up his phone to a computer?" "Yes, his laptop." "Do you know where he keeps it?" "In his office." "Can you access it?" I thought about this. Robert's office was his sanctuary, but he never locked me out. He'd never needed to. "Yes." "Good. Here's what we're going to do." David walked me through it, step by step. Software to install, files to copy, how to cover my tracks. It took 3 days. 3 days of waiting for Robert to leave the house, of sneaking into his office, of following David's instructions with shaking hands. On the 3rd day, David called. "I have everything. But Mrs. Chen, are you somewhere private?" I was in my car, parked at the grocery store. "Yes." The messages go back 2 years. There are photos, videos, financial records showing transfers to her account. And, "I'm sorry, I'm going to send everything to your email. Maybe you should look at it when you're home, when you're ready." But I was already opening my email on my phone. The files loaded, and what I saw destroyed me all over again. Messages, hundreds of them. I love you. I can't wait to leave her. Just a little longer, then we'll be together for real. Photos of them together, kissing, laughing, in bed. Videos I couldn't bring myself to watch. And worst of all, an email to his lawyer dated 3 months ago discussing divorce strategy, how to minimize what I'd get in the settlement, how to protect his assets. He'd been planning to leave me and making sure I'd have nothing when he did. I sat in that parking lot for 2 hours, reading every message, looking at every photo, watching my marriage disintegrate in pixels and text bubbles. By the time I drove home, something fundamental had changed in me. I wasn't broken anymore. I was angry. Robert was in the living room when I got home, watching television. "You were gone a while. Everything okay?" "Fine," I said. "Just ran into a friend." He smiled, turned back to the TV, didn't notice I hadn't brought any groceries. That night, I lay awake beside him, my mind racing. I had everything I needed for a divorce. David's evidence was ironclad, but divorce felt too clean, too easy, too fair. He'd had 2 years to make this choice. He stayed, lied, planned, and prepared to leave me with nothing. He'd stolen time I could never get back. Why should he get to walk away unscathed? The next morning, I made coffee and smiled at Robert across the table. "I was thinking," I said casually, "we should go out for dinner tonight. Celebrate." He looked up, surprised. "Celebrate what?" "Life. Us. Does it need to be a reason?" Something flickered across his face, guilt maybe, but he smiled. "Sure, that sounds nice." "Great. I'll make a reservation at Marcello's. 7 o'clock? Perfect." Marcello's. The same restaurant from the receipt, the one where he'd taken her on our anniversary. That afternoon, I called my son Michael. Unlike Sarah, he didn't suspect anything. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" "I need to ask you something, and I need you to trust me." "Okay." "Your father and I have joint accounts. Most of our money is in investments he manages. If something were to happen, do I have the same access he does?" Silence. Then, "Mom, what's going on?"
Just answer the question, sweetheart. Yes, legally you have equal access, but if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, I'm not thinking anything, just being practical. He didn't believe me. "Mom, if you need help..." "I'm fine, Michael, really, but thank you." After I hung up, I spent the afternoon at the bank, our bank, where we'd had accounts for 30 years. I sat down with the manager, a woman named Patricia who'd helped us refinance our mortgage. "Mrs. Chen," she said warmly, "what can I do for you?" "I want to understand our financial situation," I said. "All of it. Every account, every investment, everything." Patricia's smile faltered slightly. "Of course, but doesn't your husband usually handle this?" "I'm handling it now." She pulled up our accounts. It took an hour. By the end, I had a complete picture. Joint accounts with significant balances, investment portfolios, a retirement fund, the house paid off. On paper, we were comfortable, more than comfortable. But there was something else, too. Patricia showed me a transfer that had happened every month for the past 2 years. $5,000 moved from our joint account to a personal account in Robert's name only. "Did you authorize these?" Patricia asked carefully. "No." Her expression tightened. "Mrs. Chen, I think you should speak to a lawyer." "I intend to." That evening, I got dressed for dinner. I wore a navy dress Robert had always liked, put on makeup, styled my hair. When I came downstairs, Robert was waiting, and for a moment he looked at me the way he used to, before Vanessa, before the lies. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you." We drove to Marcello's in silence. The restaurant was elegant, dimly lit, romantic. The hostess led us to a corner table, the same table, I noticed, where he'd sat with her in the photo. "This is nice," Robert said, scanning the menu. "We should do this more often." I agreed. When the waiter came, Robert ordered wine, the same wine from the receipt. Did he remember? Did he care? "So," he said once we were alone, "what are we celebrating?" I looked at him across the table. This man I'd loved for 40 years. This stranger. "Truth?" He blinked. "Truth?" "Yes, I think we should be honest with each other. Really honest, don't you?" Something shifted in his expression. Wariness. "Of course." "Good." I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila folder, set it on the table between us. "Because I've been honest with you for 40 years, Robert, and I think it's time you returned the favor." His eyes dropped to the folder. "What is that?" "Why don't you open it?" His hand trembled slightly as he reached for it. He opened the folder. Inside were printouts, text messages, photos, bank statements, all of it. The color drained from his face. "I know everything," I said quietly, "about Vanessa, about the apartment, about the money you've been stealing from our accounts, about your plan to divorce me and leave me with nothing." He stared at the papers, mouth opening and closing silently. 2 years, Robert. You've been lying to me for 2 years, and I trusted you. I believed every word. "Margaret, His voice cracked. "Don't," I held a hand. "Don't you dare. I don't want to hear excuses or apologies or explanations. I just want you to know that I know, and I want you to understand that everything you've done, every lie you've told, every promise you've broken, it all has consequences." Tears filled his eyes. Real or performed, I couldn't tell anymore. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. I was going to tell you. I didn't know how." "So you plan to divorce me instead and make sure I got as little as possible? Very considerate." He flinched. "That email, I was just exploring options. I wasn't actually going to—" "Stop lying." My voice was steel. "You've lost the right to lie to me." People at nearby tables were starting to stare. Robert noticed, his face flushing. "Can we please not do this here?" "Why not? You brought her here on our anniversary, so this seems like the perfect place." He slumped in his chair, defeated. "What do you want from me?" "What do I want?" I leaned forward. "I want the last 2 years back. I want the money you stole. I want the life I thought I had. But I can't have any of that, can I?" He shook his head miserably. "So here's what's going to happen instead. Tomorrow morning, you're going to call your lawyer and tell him there's been a change of plans. You're going to agree to a fair division of assets, more than fair, and you're going to do it quietly without fighting me." "Margaret, I'm not finished. You're also going to return every penny you've transferred to that private account. If you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done. Your colleagues, your friends, Michael and Sarah, everyone." His face went pale. "You wouldn't? Try me." We sat in silence. The waiter approached, then saw our faces and retreated. Finally, Robert whispered, "I never meant to hurt you." "But you did. For 2 years you hurt me every single day, and the worst part is, I didn't even know it was happening." "I'm sorry." "I don't care." And I realized, saying it out loud, that it was true. I didn't care about his sorry. It meant nothing, changed nothing. I stood up, leaving the folder on the table. "I'm going home. You can stay here or go to your apartment or wherever you want, but don't come back to the house tonight. I need space." "Where am I supposed to go?" I almost laughed. "I'm sure Vanessa will take you in. After all, isn't that what you wanted?" I walked out of the restaurant, leaving him sitting there alone at the table where he'd celebrated our anniversary with another woman. The night air was cool, sharp. I stood in the parking lot for a moment, breathing it in. I'd done it. I'd confronted him, and I hadn't fallen apart. I drove home slowly, carefully. The house was dark when I arrived. I walked through it, turning on lights, and it felt different somehow. Emptier, but also more mine. I changed out of my dress, made tea, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I pulled up the files David had sent, looked at them again, this time without crying. Then I started making a list. Lawyer, financial advisor, therapist maybe, locksmith. Yes, definitely a locksmith. Around midnight, I heard a car in the driveway, Robert's key in the lock. The door opened. "Margaret?" His voice was tentative. "I told you not to come back tonight." He appeared in the kitchen doorway, his face haggard. "This is my house, too. For now." We stared at each other. Then he said, "I ended it with Vanessa. I called her from the restaurant, told her it was over. Good for you. I want to fix this. I want to fix us."
I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "There is no us anymore, Robert. You made sure of that. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake, but 2 years isn't a mistake. 2 years is a choice. You chose her. Every single day you chose her over me." "I chose wrong." "Yes, you did." He took a step forward. "Please, Margaret, please. We've been together 40 years. That has to count for something." "It does count. It counts as 40 years I'll never get back. 40 years I gave to someone who threw them away for a woman half his age." His face crumpled. "Don't say that." "Why not? It's true. Tell me, Robert, when did you stop loving me? Was it gradual, or was there a moment when you looked at me and thought, 'I'm done'?" "I never stopped loving you." "You just loved her more." He had no answer for that. "Go to bed," I said tiredly. "Guest room. We'll talk more tomorrow." He nodded and left. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, heard the guest room door close, then silence. I sat there until dawn, making plans, thinking about the future, trying to imagine a life without Robert, and finding, to my surprise, that it wasn't as terrifying as I had expected. Maybe even a little bit freeing. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Her name was Catherine Wu, and Sarah had recommended her. "She's tough," Sarah had said. "If anyone can help you, it's her." Catherine's office was downtown, modern and professional. She was younger than me, maybe 50, with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. "Tell me everything," she said. I did, showed her the files David had compiled, the text messages, the photos, the financial records. She reviewed them methodically, her expression never changing. When I finished, she sat back. "This is very comprehensive evidence. With this, we can pursue a favorable settlement. The financial transfers especially will help. I want what's fair." "Fair or fair to you?" I met her eyes. "Both." She smiled slightly. "I like you, Mrs. Chen. Let's get started." Over the next few weeks, Catherine filed for divorce on my behalf. Robert was served papers at his office. He called me immediately, upset. "You didn't have to humiliate me like that." "I didn't humiliate you. I filed for divorce, discreetly. Your colleagues only know if you told them." "Margaret, please, can't we work this out?" "We're working it out through lawyers." He tried several more times to talk to me, sent flowers, wrote letters, even showed up at the house with my favorite takeout. I refused all of it. "You had 2 years to work things out," I told him through the closed door. "I'm giving you 3 months. Be grateful." I meant it too. I wasn't interested in prolonging this. I wanted it over, wanted him out of my life so I could start building a new one. Catherine was efficient. Within weeks, we had a complete accounting of all marital assets, the house, the investments, the retirement funds. Robert's lawyer tried to argue that some of it was separate property, but Catherine demolished every claim with documentation. The settlement she proposed was generous to me. The house would be mine, half of all investments and retirement funds, and compensation for the money Robert had transferred without my knowledge. Robert's lawyer called it unreasonable. Catherine called it justice. Your client committed financial fraud, she told him coolly during a mediation session. Mrs. Chen is being more than fair by not pursuing criminal charges. Robert sat across the conference table from me looking older than I'd ever seen him. You'd really do that? Press charges? If I have to. He signed the papers that afternoon. The divorce was finalized 3 months after I'd found those text messages. 3 months to end 40 years. It felt both too fast and not fast enough. On the day the judgment came through, Catherine called me. "Congratulations," she said, "you're officially divorced." "Thank you. What will you do now?" I looked around my house now, and smiled. Live. The first thing I did was change everything. New locks, new paint colors, new furniture. I got rid of everything that reminded me of Robert, donated it all to charity. Then I called Sarah and Michael and told them to come over. They arrived together, Michael with his wife Rachel, Sarah with Tom and the kids. They'd been worried, I could see it in their faces. "Sit down," I said. "We need to talk." They sat. I took a breath. "Your father and I are divorced." Silence. Then Michael said, "We know, Mom. Dad told us." "What else did he tell you?" Sarah and Michael exchanged glances. "That you two grew apart," Sarah said carefully, "that it was mutual." I almost laughed. "Of course he did. Let me tell you what actually happened." I told them everything, not the painful details, but enough. The affair, the lies, the financial manipulation, the planning to leave me with nothing. By the time I finished, both my children looked stricken. "Mom," Michael said, his voice shaking, "I'm so sorry. We should have—" "Should have what? You didn't know. He made sure no one knew." "We should have noticed," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "We should have been there for you." "You're here now. That's what matters." Michael stood abruptly. "I'm going to call him. I'm going to—" "You're going to sit down," I said firmly, "and you're going to let me handle this my way. I don't need you to fight my battles." "But Mom—" "Michael, sit." He sat. We talked for hours that night about the divorce, about the future, about everything. By the end, they understood. Not everything, but enough. "What will you do now?" Rachel asked. "I don't know yet," I said honestly, "but I have time to figure it out. That's more than I had a few months ago." The next few months passed in a blur. I traveled, something I'd always wanted to do, but Robert had never been interested in. I went to Italy, to France, to Spain. I ate good food and drank good wine and didn't think about him at all. I joined a book club, started taking art classes, made new friends, women like me who'd survived and come out stronger. Elaine, my friend from college, called one day. We hadn't spoken in years. "I heard about the divorce," she said. "How are you doing?" "Better than expected." "Good. Listen, a group of us meet every Tuesday, women who've been through similar things. You should come." I did. The first meeting was awkward, but by the third, I felt at home. These women understood. We didn't dwell on the past. We focused on the future, what we wanted, what we'd build. One woman, Janet, had started her own business after her divorce. Another, Louise, had gone back to school at 65. Their stories inspired me. "What about you?" Janet asked one evening. "What's your dream?" I'd never thought about it before. I'd been too busy being Robert's wife, being a mother, being whoever everyone else needed me to be. "I want to write," I said suddenly. "I've always wanted to write." "Then write," Louise said simply. So I did. I started a blog about life after 60, about starting over, about finding yourself after losing everything. I wrote about the divorce, about the pain, about the healing. To my surprise, people read it, then more people, then thousands of people. Messages filled my inbox, women thanking me for giving voice to their experiences, for showing them they weren't alone. One message stayed with me. I'm 64 and just found out my husband has been cheating for 5 years. I thought my life was over. Your blog showed me it's just beginning. Thank you. I cried when I read that. Not from sadness, but from purpose. My pain meant something now. It helped others. I wrote more, started a podcast, wrote a book proposal. A small publisher picked it up. 1 year after my divorce, I held my published book in my hands. The second half, A Woman's Guide to Starting Over After 60. Sarah called immediately when she saw it. "Mom, I'm so proud of you." "Thank you, baby." "Dad saw it too. He called me." My heart didn't hurt at the mention of him anymore. "What did he say?" "He wanted to know if you were writing about him. I told him to read it and find out." I smiled. "And?" "I don't think he will. I think he's too afraid." "Good. Let him be afraid. Let him wonder. I didn't write the book for him. I wrote it for me and for every woman who needed to know that life doesn't end when a marriage does. Sometimes it just begins." Robert reached out a few times in that first year, emails mostly, asking how I was, saying he missed me, wondering if we could talk. I never responded. There was nothing left to say. I heard through Michael that he and Vanessa didn't last. She left him after 6 months, once the excitement of sneaking around was gone, and she realized Robert was just a man, flawed and ordinary. He was alone now, living in a small apartment, semi-retired, turning into fully retired. He looked older, Michael said, tired. I felt nothing hearing this. Not satisfaction, not pity, just a distant, cool indifference. 2 years after the divorce, I sold the house. Too many memories, and I didn't need the space anymore. I bought a small condo by the beach, all windows and light. I spent my mornings writing, my afternoons walking the shore. Life was quiet, peaceful, exactly what I needed. Sarah visited often with the grandkids. Michael came when he could. They never mentioned Robert unless I asked, and I rarely asked. One evening, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, a glass of wine in hand. The sky was orange and purple, the ocean dark and endless. My phone buzzed. An email from a literary agent. They'd read my book and wanted to discuss a 3-book deal. I stared at the message, then at the sunset, then back at the message. 3 years ago, I'd been standing in my daughter-in-law's driveway, my world shattering around me. I'd been Margaret Chin, wife of Robert, mother of 2, keeper of a home and a life I thought was real. Now I was just Margaret, writer, survivor, woman who'd rebuilt herself from nothing. And somehow, impossibly, I was happy. I replied to the agent, scheduled a call. Then I sat back and watched the sun slip below the horizon, painting the world in gold. Behind me, inside the condo, I'd hung a photo, not of Robert, not of our old life, but of me, standing on a cliff in Ireland last summer, arms spread wide, face tilted toward the sky. Sarah had taken it. "You look free," she'd said when she showed it to me. She was right. I was free. The road from that Thursday morning to this sunset had been long, painful, impossible at times. There were days I'd wanted to give up, days the anger consumed me, days the grief felt like drowning. But I'd survived. More than survived. I'd transformed. Robert had tried to take everything from me, my marriage, my money, my dignity. Instead, he'd given me something unexpected, the chance to find out who I was without him, and I liked who I found. I thought about Vanessa sometimes, wondered where she was, what she was doing, if she ever thought about the life she tried to steal. But those thoughts never lasted long. She was a chapter I'd closed. So was Robert. The only story that mattered now was mine. 3 months later, I was at a book signing in New York. My publisher had arranged a small event at an independent bookstore in Brooklyn. I didn't expect many people. It was a Tuesday evening, raining. But when I arrived, there was a line out the door. Women of all ages, some with daughters, some with friends, some alone. They held copies of my book, dog-eared and highlighted. "You saved my life," one woman told me, tears in her eyes. She was my age, maybe older. "I read your book and finally left. After 30 years, I left." "Good," I said, holding her hand. "You deserve better." Another woman, younger, maybe 40, "My mom gave me your book, said if I ever felt trapped, I should remember Margaret Chin." By the end of the night, I'd signed over 100 books. My hand ached, but my heart was full. As I was packing up, the bookstore owner approached me. "There's someone who'd like to meet you, says she knew you in college." I looked up, and there, standing by the poetry section, was a face I hadn't seen in decades. Helen. She smiled, older but unmistakable. "Hi, Margaret." We'd been roommates freshman year, lost touch after graduation. She hugged me tightly. "I saw your book, read it in one sitting. I had no idea you went through all that." Nobody did. I went through something similar 10 years ago, divorced at 55, thought my life was over. But it wasn't. No, it wasn't. And your book, it reminded me of that, reminded me that we're stronger than we know. We went to a coffee shop, talked for hours. By the time we said goodbye, we'd exchanged numbers, made plans to meet again. Walking back to my hotel that night, rain-soaked but smiling, I realized something. The life I'd lost had been comfortable, safe, familiar, but it had also been small, limited by someone else's needs, someone else's lies. This life, the one I'd built alone, was bigger, messier, mine. I wouldn't trade it for anything. 4 years after the divorce, I got a call from Michael. His voice was tight, careful. "Mom, Dad's in the hospital." My heart stumbled. Old habits. "What happened?" "Heart attack. They think he'll be okay, but they're not sure yet." I closed my eyes, felt the expected sadness, but also something else. Distance. "Do you want me to come?" "It's up to you." I thought about it, about Robert lying in a hospital bed, alone, about the man I'd loved for 40 years, the man who'd betrayed me for 2. "No," I said finally, "but you should go. Be with him. He's still your father." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." After we hung up, I sat for a long time, processing. Part of me felt guilty for not going. The old Margaret would have gone, would have sat beside him, held his hand, forgiven everything. But I wasn't her anymore. Robert survived the heart attack. Michael told me he'd asked for me, wanted to see me. I sent flowers with a card, "Wishing you a full recovery, Margaret." Nothing more, nothing less. He tried calling after he was released. I didn't answer. Finally, he sent a letter, handwritten, pages long. I almost threw it away, but curiosity won. He wrote about regret, about how he destroyed the best thing in his life, about how he thought of me every day, about how he'd made the biggest mistake of his life and would spend the rest of his years regretting it. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he wrote, "but I need you to know that I'm sorry, truly, deeply sorry. You were the best person I knew, and I was too stupid to see it until it was too late." I read the letter 3 times, then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. I never replied. Some things don't need a response. Some apologies come too late to matter, and some people forfeit the right to your forgiveness. I'd spent 4 years rebuilding myself. I wasn't going to let him back in now, not even to absolve his guilt. He'd have to live with it, just as I'd had to live with what he'd done. 5 years after the divorce, I was invited to speak at a women's conference in California. 2,000 women filled the auditorium. I stood on that stage, microphone in hand, and told my story. Not the sanitized version, the real one. The pain, the betrayal, the nights I'd wanted to die, but also the healing, the growth, the woman I'd become. I was 62 when my world fell apart. I said, an age when society tells you your life is basically over, that the best years are behind you, that you should be grateful for what you have and not ask for more. I paused, looked out at all those faces. I'm here to tell you that's a lie. Life doesn't end at 60 or 70 or 80. It only ends when you stop believing you deserve better. The applause was thunderous. After the speech, women lined up to talk to me. Some cried, some hugged me, some just thanked me for existing. "You gave me hope," one woman said. She was 70, silver-haired and elegant. "I've been in a loveless marriage for 45 years. I always thought it was too late to leave, but you showed me it's not." "It's never too late," I told her. She squeezed my hand, tears streaming. "Thank you." That night, lying in my hotel room, I thought about her, about all of them, about the invisible army of women suffering in silence, convinced they're too old, too tired, too late. I thought about the Margaret who'd stood in that driveway 5 years ago, holding a pie, her world crumbling. If I could go back and tell her anything, it would be this: you're going to survive. More than survive, you're going to thrive. And you're going to help others do the same. 6 years after the divorce, on what would have been my 45th wedding anniversary, I woke up alone in my beachside condo and felt nothing but peace. No sadness, no anger, no regret, just peace. I made coffee, sat on my balcony, and watched the sunrise. The sky turned from purple to pink to gold, and I marveled at how something could be so beautiful and so ordinary at the same time. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. "Thinking of you today. Love you, Mom." I smiled, texted back, "Love you too. Having a perfect day." And I was, because this day wasn't about Robert anymore. It wasn't about what I'd lost or what he'd taken. It was about what I'd built. This life, small and quiet and completely mine. Later that day, I went for a walk on the beach. The sand was warm beneath my feet, the water cool. A few people nodded as they passed. A dog ran up, tail wagging, and I scratched behind its ears before it bounded away. I thought about everything that had happened, the discovery, the divorce, the rebuilding, how I'd gone from Margaret Chin, wife, to just Margaret. That loss of identity had been the most terrifying and most liberating thing I'd ever experienced. I thought about Robert, too, but not with pain, just with a distant, almost anthropological curiosity. He'd been such a huge part of my life for so long, and now he was just a person I used to know, someone who taught me hard lessons about trust and self-worth and resilience. I was grateful for those lessons, even if I hated how I learned them. As I walked, I thought about all the women who'd read my book, attended my talks, sent me messages, women who'd found the courage to leave, women who stayed but set boundaries, women who'd rebuilt themselves after devastation. I thought about the younger women, too, the ones who told me my story had shown them what not to tolerate. "I won't waste 40 years, one had written. "Because of you, I'll waste 0. That made it worth it, all of it. The pain, the fear, the nights I'd cried until I couldn't breathe. Worth it, because my story became something bigger than me. That evening, I sat at my desk and started writing again. Not a blog post or a book chapter, but something different. A letter. Dear women who think it's too late. It's not. I promise you, it's not. I was 62 when I discovered my husband's affair, 62 when I realized my entire marriage was a lie, 62 when I thought my life was over. I'm 68 now, and I've never been happier. I wrote for hours, pouring everything into it. My story, yes, but also my hopes for every woman reading, my belief that we're capable of more than we know, that age is just a number and strength has no expiration date. When I finished, I published it on my blog. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed. The next morning, it had been shared 10,000 times. My inbox overflowed with messages, women from all over the world telling me their stories, thanking me, asking for advice. I couldn't respond to all of them, but I tried, and for the ones I couldn't reach directly, I wrote more. More blog posts, more articles, more truth, because that's what they needed, what we all need. The truth that we're stronger than we think, that betrayal doesn't have to define us, that life after loss can be beautiful. 7 years after the divorce, I published my third book. By then, I had a following, women who called themselves Margaret's Army, women who took their lives back, women who refused to shrink, women who became versions of themselves they never knew existed. The book launch was in San Francisco. Hundreds of people attended. I stood at the podium looking out at all those faces and felt something I'd never expected. Pride. Not just in what I'd accomplished, but in what we'd all accomplished together. This community of women who'd survived and thrived. 7 years ago, I said, I thought my story was ending. Instead, it was just beginning, and I've learned something important. Our stories don't belong to the people who hurt us. They belong to us, and we get to decide how they end. The room erupted. Women stood, applauding, some crying. After the event, a woman approached me. She was young, maybe 30, with a baby on her hip. "My grandmother gave me your first book," she said. "She just left her husband after 50 years. She was terrified, but your book gave her courage. She died last year, but before she did, she told me to thank you if I ever met you. She said you saved her life." I felt tears prick my eyes. "What was her name?" She said, "Dorothy." "Tell her story," I said. "Make sure people know that Dorothy had courage, that she chose herself. That matters." The woman nodded, tears streaming. "I will." That night, I thought about Dorothy, about all of Dorothy's, women who'd lived entire lives for others, who'd finally chosen themselves at the end. I thought about my own grandmother, who'd stayed in a bad marriage until she died, who'd never had the chance to be anything other than someone's wife. I thought about how much had changed, how much could still change. And I made a promise to Dorothy, to my grandmother, to all the women who'd never gotten their second chance. I would keep telling these stories. I would keep showing the world that it's never too late, that we are never too old, never too tired, never too broken to begin again. 8 years after the divorce, I got another call from Michael. This time his voice was different, sad but also relieved. "Dad passed away, Mom, last night, in his sleep." I sat down slowly. "Oh, are you okay?" Was I? I searched inside myself for grief, for regret, for anything resembling the love I'd once felt. All I found was a quiet, complicated sadness, not for the man he'd been at the end, but for the man I thought he was at the beginning. "I'm okay," I said. "Are you?" "Yeah, I think so. He'd been sick for a while. It was time." "I'm sorry, honey. I know that's hard. Will you come to the funeral?" I thought about it. Thought about sitting in a church, listening to people talk about Robert like he'd been a good man. Thought about Vanessa, who might be there. Thought about the life I'd left behind. "No," I said gently, "but you should go. Say goodbye for both of us." After we hung up, I sat on my balcony for a long time. The ocean was calm, the sky clear. A perfect day. I thought about Robert, about the early years when I'd loved him completely, about the middle years when love had faded to habit, about the end when everything shattered. I thought about how he'd died alone, with regrets he'd never resolved, how he'd thrown away something real for something temporary.
And I thought about how I'd almost let that destroy me, how I'd almost believed that his betrayal meant I was worthless. But I wasn't worthless. I never had been. The problem had never been me. It had been him. His weakness, his selfishness, his inability to see what he had until it was gone. I didn't hate him anymore. I didn't love him either. I just felt sorry for him, for the life he'd wasted, for the woman he'd lost. That evening, I wrote a post on my blog, not about Robert specifically, but about endings. When someone from your past dies, I wrote, you're allowed to feel complicated things. Sadness for what could have been, relief that it's finally over, grief for the person they were before they hurt you, and peace knowing that they can't hurt you anymore. All of these feelings are valid. All of them are okay. The responses poured in, women sharing their own stories of complicated grief, of mourning people who'd hurt them, of finally being free. I read every message, responded to as many as I could, and felt, once again, that this was my purpose. This was what I was meant to do. 9 years after the divorce, I turned 70. Sarah and Michael threw me a party at my condo. My grandchildren were there, grown now, beautiful and kind. Friends from my book club, from my writing group, from all the different lives I'd built. We ate cake and laughed and toasted to the future. And when everyone had gone home, Sarah stayed behind to help clean up. "Mom," Sarah said as we washed dishes, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever regret leaving Dad, even a little?" I thought about this, really thought about it. "No," I said finally. "I regret that he betrayed me. I regret the years I wasted not seeing who he really was. But leaving? That was the best decision I ever made." Sarah smiled, relief in her eyes. "Good, because you're happier now than I ever saw you with him." "I am. You inspire me, you know, the way you rebuilt your life, the way you turned your pain into something meaningful." I hugged her tightly. "You inspired me too, you and Michael. Knowing you were watching, knowing I had to show you what strength looked like, that kept me going." We finished the dishes in comfortable silence, and when she left, I stood on my balcony one more time, looking at the ocean, at the stars, at the vast, beautiful world. I thought about the woman I'd been 10 years ago, the one who'd found those text messages and felt her world end. If I could speak to her now, I'd tell her, yes, it's going to hurt, more than you can imagine. There will be days you won't want to get out of bed, days you'll wish you'd never found out, days you'll hate yourself for not being enough. But you were always enough, and on the other side of this pain is something you can't see yet: freedom, joy, a life that's completely, entirely yours. So hold on, keep going. Trust that even when everything falls apart, you're building something new, something stronger, something real. 10 years after the divorce, I woke up in my condo, made my coffee, and sat on my balcony watching the sunrise, the same as I did every morning. But this morning felt different, significant, a decade since everything changed. I thought about marking it somehow, but then I realized I already had. Every day I'd lived since then, every word I'd written, every woman I'd helped, that was the memorial. That was how I'd honored the woman I used to be and celebrated the woman I'd become. My phone buzzed. A message from a reader. "I just left. After 28 years, I finally left. I read your story and realized I deserved better. Thank you for showing me the way." I smiled, typed back, "You showed yourself the way. I just held up a mirror. Proud of you." And I was, so proud. Of her, of all of them, of myself. I'd started this journey drowning in pain, convinced my life was over. I'd ended it standing on solid ground, more alive than I'd ever been.
The ocean stretched endlessly before me, and somewhere out there were thousands of women reading my words, finding their strength, choosing themselves. I turned my betrayal into a beacon, my pain into power, my ending into a beginning. And if I'd learned anything in these 10 years, it's this. We are capable of so much more than we know. Our strength is limitless, our resilience unbreakable. Age doesn't diminish us, loss doesn't destroy us, betrayal doesn't define us. We define ourselves. I finished my coffee, closed my eyes, and felt the morning sun on my face, warm, bright, promising. Behind me was a decade of pain, growth, and transformation. Ahead was the rest of my life, unwritten and full of possibility. I thought about Robert one last time, not with anger or grief, but with something like gratitude, because he'd given me something unexpected, the chance to discover who I was without him. And she was magnificent. I opened my eyes, stood up, and walked inside to my desk. I had another book to write, another speech to give, another woman to help find her way. The story that had started with betrayal had become something beautiful, a testament to resilience, a roadmap for others, a life worth living. And it was mine, all mine. I wouldn't change a thing.